Hello, you're listening to Environmental Soup through the facilities of Trent Radio. I am recording this on December 2nd, and today the Ontario Auditor General released a report, and I will be talking about that because it is related to the environmental registry. I am going to, and I might also talk about the Memorandum of Understanding between Alberta and Canada if there was time. I do not think that there was time in this half hour, but I might make a separate video discussing that, and I will be posting archive content on Substack. Environmental Soup Archives. So let's get into it. Let's see. So there was a report called Operation of the Environmental Bill of Rights, 1993, and this is part of an annual report, 2025. There's the operation of the Environmental Bill of Rights, and I don't see anything that relates to the environment. Possibly a review of government advertising, and then there's some other. Oh, the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority. That also relates to the environment. I haven't read that. I hope that I have time to look at that. Anyways, every year the Auditor General of Ontario releases a report. It used to be the Environmental Commissioner, but now it's the Auditor General. So there's a summary of what was found, and it's not good. The Ontarians were not consulted about the amendment to the Building Code Act, and that there was a requirement for public consultations on items in prescribed ministries that have negative impacts on the environment to be put in, potential negative impacts to be put into the environmental registry. So the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the report says, did not consult Ontarians about legislative amendment meant to prevent municipalities from creating and enforcing their own green building standards. And this was in Bill 17. There was also Bill 17. Before I go on to the next one, a third of emissions are related to greenhouse gas emissions are related to buildings. So if municipalities cannot enforce stronger building standards, it's going to be that much more difficult to reach climate targets, which is there was an obligation of the Ontarian government to reach climate targets. There is also Bill 17, Protect Ontario by Building Faster and Smarter Act. That was passed before the Environmental Bill of Rights consultation on the bill was complete, and before ministries could consider all public comments. I'm concerned about that because this means that the public input was not considered, and there was a weaker legislation because of it. The government of Ontario broke the law in regards to this. There was a clear requirement for consultation. Those exemptions of infrastructural projects. Let's see here. They're related to Highway 413 and Ontario Place. And then there's the ministry did not meet legislative duty to educate the public. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks did not take any action to provide public educational programs about the EBO. This is concerning because the right to appeal certain legislation, the right to comment, those are important rights that I think should be that would be violated, because if you don't know that you have a right, you can't exercise it. And then there's no dedicated staff to do education work. And it's required under the Environmental Bill of Rights. Let's see. Ministries posted some environmental registry notice that lack information to help Ontarians fully understand proposals and decisions. 1/5 of proposals did not explain the expected environmental impacts of the proposals. We need to understand the impacts of a proposal in order to submit proper feedback. 1/5 of the instrument decisions notices did not include links to the issued instruments. And instruments are things like permits, approvals, stuff like that. Then those Environment and Natural Resources Ministry did not comply with EBO timelines. Timelines are important because those requirement deadlines for reviewing, and if deadlines are missed, then it means the environmental impact would be there would be negative environmental impact, and there would be loss of the right to appeal a decision. So there have been positive things. The public submitted thousands of comments, and ministries made changes in the final decisions as a result of those comments. But there is a however statement. And that statement is there was a disregard for the public's right under the EBO legislation And then the report says, we conclude that together the province's actions, inactions, and decisions in recent years are eroding Ontarians' EBO rights, Ontario environmental bill of rights, and opportunities to participate meaningfully in the government's environmental decision making. And then they give examples: not following EBO requirements for consulting the publics and responding to applicants for review and investigation, not addressing gaps in EBO coverage, and creating exemptions that allow the government to make environmentally significant decisions without public consultation under the EBO. And then there's since 2019, Ontario has been taking action that had rarely or never been taken since the EBO was enacted, such as bills containing environmentally significant proposals were passed without EBO consultation. Bills containing environmentally significant proposals were passed while EBO consultation was still underway, and without the responsible ministries considering the public comment. Environmentally significant permits and approvals necessary for certain major projects have been exempted from the EBO's public consultation requirements, and environmentally significant proposals about acts have been retroactively exempted by legislation from EBO public consultation. And then there's a graph. I know that if you're listening on radio, you might not be, you're not able to see the graph, but I'll post this on YouTube. This is figure 1 on page 5. And then you can see, if you're on YouTube or Substack, in 2019 the court found contravention of the EBO in 2019 and in 2021. And there was a big cluster from 2019 to 2025 of every year there's no consultation, incomplete consultation, or an exemption. And previously, in previous years, there was maybe one, and with no consultation or an exemption. And like 2009, those 3. But in 2022, there was 7. And so that's concerning. And then an incomplete consultation, a decision was made before the conclusion of the EBO public consultation period. And that just started happening. The incomplete consultation started happening in 2022, according to this graph. And then the ministries agreed to 9 of the audit's 12 recommendations, which is interesting because the government hasn't, like, the recommendations in previous years have been similar to this year. So they haven't, in many cases they haven't made significant enough changes. So I don't necessarily believe that the government agrees with many of the recommendations. There have been changes. and there have been improvements, but there have also been backsliding or stagnation. Section 2 of this report is the background. They have public notice and consultation through the registry. It says prescribed ministries must use the online registry to give public notice about proposed acts, regulations, policies, and instruments. So instruments or permits, licenses, approvals, and other authorization orders that are environmentally significant. And there's a requirement of 30 days to make comment on proposals. The 30 days is significant because it had been violated multiple times. And then there's background about statement of environmental values. Appeal. The EBR gives residents of Ontario the right to seek leave or permission from an adjudicative body to appeal government decisions on certain instruments. And then there's the ability to request a review and investigation. So section 4 is called What We Found, and then again Ontarians will not consulted about amendment to the Building Code Act. This goes more in depth into what was found. The Municipal Affairs Ministry did not post an amendment to the Building Code Act found in Bill 17 for public notice, consultation on the registry. And then the report was saying, since green building standards aim to manage environmental impacts, the amendments to the Building Code Act could potentially have a significant impact on the environment. And then they have recommendations. And then the recommendations are saying we recommend that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, when it considers whether a proposal is subject to the public consultation requirements under the EBL, assess the likely effects of implementing the proposal and determine whether the proposal could, if implemented, have a significant effect on the environment, and if the proposal could have a significant effect on the environment, post the proposal on the environmental registry for public consultation under the EBL. And then the province passed Bill 17 before completing consultation and considering all public comments. I think this is a problem because of the road's trust in government and confidence in decision making. It's important to have public participation in making regulations, acts, and without public confidence, you end up with an erosion of democracy. And so it says, on May 12th, the Minister of Municipal Affairs posted changes to the Planning Act and the City of Toronto Act. And then on June 3rd, the province passed Bill 17, 8 and 9 days before the required minimum 30-day consultation period had ended on 3 environmentally significant proposals. And then they remained open until the end, and over 70%. This is from the report. Everything is, most of what I'm talking about is from the report. Over 70% of 222 public comments were submitted after the bill had passed. So it's impossible for the government and ministry to consider comments in the decision-making process. And then there was no update. And it takes time and resources to make a comment on the environmental registry. So they're not respecting people's time. Let's see. And then there's no notice of the decision over 5 months after the bill passed. And then it's the 4th year that they found that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs did not consult the public for a minimum of 30 days required by the EBO before environmentally significant changes to the act were made. So that's concerning that it's the 4th year in a row. And then those are why it matters. The value of public input is dismissed, and there's risk of undermining the public's confidence in the EBO as a tool for public participation, which would be a shame. I think the EBO is a valuable tool, but the government has to listen to the public. It's required to listen to the public under the Environmental Bill of Rights. And I've noticed that there's an increasing amount of times when bills have passed before the consultation timelines. And then there's Section 4.2, EBO coverage. There's been exemptions. Regulations are not being kept up to date. And in the why it matters, excluding environmentally significant proposals from the EBO consultation is inconsistent with the EBO's purpose of enabling public participation in and increasing accountability for the government's environmental decision making. And then I'll skip Ontario Place. There was an exemption. The province exempted itself from the public consultation regarding changes to bike lanes. The Environment Ministry proposed exempting species at risk permits from EBO consultation. That is huge, and very concerning. And then it says at the time of finalizing the audit, the new Species Conservation Act was not yet in effect, and the ministry had not made a decision about the proposed blanket exemption for permits and orders. And then there's going to be a future report. I am very concerned about this change. Let's see. regulations listing ministries, acts, and instruments subject to the EBO not being kept up to date. Those gaps remaining in the Environmental Bill of Rights because responsibility of the Ontario Heritage Act has been transferred from Tourism Ministry to the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, which is not registered under the Environmental Bill of Rights. But the Ontario Heritage Act is, or prescribed, I mean. Yeah, and then those 80% decline in Environmental Bill of Rights related posts on the Ministry's social media, Ministry of Environment, between 2021 and 2023. And then in 2024/2025, they have not started research needed to assess public awareness and understanding of the Bill of Rights. And then there was a lack of dedicated staff. And then let's see, where am I? Okay, so I have a couple minutes. The ministry did not explain the potential negative impact of natural gas consumption, and the ministry did not explain how it assessed risk of water taking. And then those 18% of instruments did not have applicable approvals. I want to get to some of the... there was a decline in decisions being posted in a timely manner. And then there was 81 outdated notices, which is 88% more than in 2023/2024. And 16 notices were posted more than 10 years ago. And this was before the previous government. And in 2014/15, there was 1,800 outdated proposals, and now those 81. But there's still some that are very significant. And then the Environment Ministry has not updated their Statement of Environmental Values in the last 5 years. Environment, Municipal Affairs, and Energy. Environment Ministry did not update its Statement of Environmental Values since 2008. And there was only a minor update in 2015. And then, if it's not kept up to date, the report is saying that the considerations of the Statement of Environmental Values may not be meaningful or lead to better decisions and outcomes for the environment. And it might not be related to what the government is doing anyways. And then they could not always show that they considered statements of environmental values meaningfully or at all when making environmentally significant decisions. And then, they didn't comply with timelines. And then there was a time when there were 6 days that the registry was not working, and part of the time the government didn't even know that it wasn't working and did not make changes to the notices. There was no updates, so the public had no way to comment on environmental decisions, environmental registry items, or appeal decisions, and the timelines were not adjusted to make appeals. And yeah, this is where I will end for the video, and I will go to the recommendations on the YouTube. I'll look at some of them. Okay, so if you're still watching, thank you. So this is past the 30-minute mark. I'm just going to go through the recommendations. One by one. So, recommendation 1, the Municipal Affairs Ministry agreed with the recommendation. It's important that those you look at follow-up. Recommendation 2, the Municipal Affairs Ministry agreed. And Infrastructural Ministry agreed, Transportation Ministry agreed. Recommendation 3, Infrastructural, there was not an agreement, and this recommendation was consistently consult the public about environmentally significantly proposals in accordance with the requirements under the EBL, and refrain from proposing to exempt specific projects or legislative proposals under the EBL. And then they're saying, by advancing priority projects quickly through new streamlined processes, including exemptions from EBL public consultations, we will be able to build priority projects faster. And then this contradicts their own statement of they will make reasonable efforts to avoid proposing exemptions to the EBL. So this is very concerning. They're demonstrating that they don't even care about public feedback. And it's not even that much to ask. Like, you're talking about 30 days here. Like, how much of a delay is 30 days? Like, is it really that? It's not really that much of a delay at all. And it improves projects. And it's not just about the environment. It's about social, economic, and environmental considerations. They would avoid lawsuits as well, potentially, if those demonstrated environmental harm down the road that could have been avoided with public consultation. And then the Transportation Ministry said that they agree, but they do not agree with the second recommendation. Yeah, they do not agree with the second consultation recommendation. And then recommendation 4, the Environment Ministry said that they agree. And this one is about having individual group staff within the ministry to lead and be responsible for the provision of public education programs about the ABO. But they have been consistently not doing this. So I don't believe them when they say this. Recommendation 5 was they want to have the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks add mandatory fields to all proposal notice to be posted on the Environmental Registry, requiring any ministry posting a proposal notice to describe the potential anticipated environmental impacts of the proposal. And then the Environmental Ministry does not agree with this recommendation. Even though they say that they are committed to transparency and meaningful public engagement, and they want information to be clear and informative. I don't see how they can do that with leaving important information out. Recommendation 6, municipal affairs, they agree. Recommendation 7, there's an agreement. Recommendation 8, there's an agreement. Recommendation 9 is related to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Park. And that's related to public consultation from 2019 on whether and how to adopt Health Canada's reduced guideline for lead in drinking water. They do not agree with this recommendation, and so that's concerning that they canceled the project and they're not going to even look at that. Recommendation 10, they agree, there's an agreement. Recommendation 11, there's an agreement. 12, there's an agreement. And that is the Auditor General's performance audit operation of the Environmental Bill of Rights, 1993, Annual Report 2025. And I will look at the other audits, Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, in a separate video. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. I will make a video about the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the oil pipeline and between the federal government and Alberta that might go through northern British Columbia, and why I'm concerned about that. And I don't know if that will be a separate. I don't know if that will be next week's video or not. I'll see what happens. I might make a video in between. Anyways, I will see you in the next video or through the facilities of Trent Radio. I'm just going to